Okay, so we'll need to agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence from declaration of interest.
We've had apologies for absence from Flavio Battesi, who represents the Roman Catholic Diocese of East Anglia, and from Andrew Reed, who represents the Church of England Diocese of Leeds.
And I think Lucy's going to be there. Yes,
She's going to be in London, she's going to make.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so does any member wish to declare any disclosable peculiar interest or non-statutory statutory disclosable interest? No? Okay, so we'll move on to the minutes. I'm going to invite you to confirm the minutes are an accurate record of the meeting when we last met. If I go through them page at a time, so let's read the first page, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Can I sign them as being a true and accurate record?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to the action log. Okay, on page 17, three schools proposal is on the agenda today anyway, but everybody happy with that? Page 18, legal support, we spoke about that last time and it's coming back to us in January. Educational outcomes, provisional results. Service committee review of capital programme. And the final one, finance performance report from Martin. Okay, let's come to those. Anybody got any questions?
Just on, on 32, this is about, I will probably bring this up later as well, so maybe we'll do that, about looking at research about the gap in education. There's no action there. So is that something we...
I'm led to believe that we're going to seek an update from Wendy on the department.
Yeah, okay.
Ongoing.
Okay.
She's on annual leave at the moment.
Right, okay, that's
some of
fine.
the clarity there. Okay. Right, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, petitions that none have been received. So we'll go on to agenda item number 4, key decisions, strategy for education provision in St Neots. Unfortunately, Hazel's unwell at the moment, so Keith's going to lead us through.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this paper sets out our proposed strategy for meeting the need for future school places in St Neots. Members will be aware that there has been significant expansion in St Neots since 2009, with over 1,400 homes built on Loves Farm 1, and an even greater expansion is planned with 3,820 homes on Winterley Park and Loves Farm 2. In May 2013, Cabinet agreed to meet the demand for secondary school places by expanding Longstands and Ernolf to 12 and 10 form entry respectively. In June of this year, we reported to this committee the need to revise this strategy because the DFE approved to pre-implementation stage a new secondary free school of 4 forms of entry. And it was agreed, if you have a look at paras 2.2 and 2.3, that summarises what was agreed at that committee meeting, and we are currently towards the back end of a feasibility study that is reporting a little bit later in this month. With regards to primary provision, members will be aware of the pressures arising from Loves Farm 1 that have led to the oversubscription of the Roundhouse Primary School. It is necessary to provide an additional 30 places, 1 form of entry, to reflect this demand from 2018 to 19. Officers are working to provide these places in mobile classrooms, pending completion of the building work necessary to provide the permanent accommodation required on a site yet to be agreed. It is not feasible to permanently expand the current roundhouse site. I cannot give you further details because of reasons of commercial confidentiality, but I would like to reassure you that Councillors Wisson and Bywater have been kept fully informed and that officers have met with them and the Roundhouse campaign to consider solutions and keep all up to date. We hope to present good news to the committee in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kit. Joe.
Yes, thank you. On in paragraph 3.8, page 24 of our bundle, I wasn't quite clear where the mobile classrooms were going, and are they are primary places, are they?
They are for primary places. We know where we want to locate them, but that's what I can't discuss. At this
Oh, I
meeting
see.
because
Right,
of
okay.
commercial
So it wasn't that I missed something.
We are
We haven't been told.
we are intensive discussion with landowners.
Right, okay. And I have a second question which relates to the free school, but I'll bring that up under the next item.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely welcome this strategy. I think it's something that we need. It just feels a bit sort of disjointed at the moment with our schools in St Neots. As with any new development that comes along, it will do. I'm still a bit concerned with the St Neots Learning Partnership Trust and 2.2. Is that what you've just said, Keith? That
Yes.
you were looking at.
Yes.
So it's going to be feasibility studies. I think that's very important. The 2.2.3 at the children. But June, unfortunately, I wasn't here on that day. Members identified the need for officers to work with the Trust and the Regional School Commissioner. Would you be able to tell me how many extra students, because I'm looking at 1.3, this is part of the background, the forecast demand for secondary school places with the result for the Eastern Expansion Development. How many, it tells you how many forms, how many extra students does this equate to? Is this something?
That's 22 times 30.
Right, so that's that's 30 per class then, so it's 22 times 30. Obviously in the paragraphs, I can't remember which one it is now, it does actually say that you're looking at perhaps expanding both schools. But at the moment, Ernhoff has probably the capacity to take that on its own. Am I right or wrong?
For the immediate future, there is
Yeah.
capacity, but when the Eastern expansion is fully completed, that is when the extra forms of entry will be needed.
So the 22 times 30 is
Yes.
the immediate.
No, that's the ultimate.
That's the ultimate.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So would it be, could I presume that maybe the expansion would be looked at on Ernhoff ultimately to,
It could be.
Yeah.
Yes.
rather than look
Yes.
at Long Sands, maybe to take the further
Yes.
projection of the,
Yes. So
Okay.
what we're looking at the moment is the expansion being on the Long Sand site for 11 to 16-year-olds and Ernhoff being developed for sixth form and special school places, post-16 and special school places. But I would like to stress that is a feasibility study, so we don't yet know whether that will be possible.
but if that study was done and that wasn't able, would the expansion of Ernhoff be to take on the 11 to 16-year-olds?
It could, but that may depend on the number of forms of entry that the free school accounts for and where that is located. So there are still those unknown factors.
I think.
And that's what is
yeah.
under discussion currently. I have a meeting with the Regional Schools Commission this Thursday about it.
Okay.
So we're trying to sort out the questions that you're asking.
Yeah, I understand. And obviously with the free school, it's just an entity, it's unknown, isn't it?
That's
so
why
it's
we
very
need to
hard
revisit the strategy, yes.
Right. And when will we know about the free school? Is it?
I do not know when we will know about the free school.
All right, thank you.
We're going to talk about free schools in the more philosophical sense in the next item. So I think it's appropriate to talk about this free school in this context.
Okay.
Now, I would suggest, I'm very concerned about this. I'm very concerned about the pupils who will go to this new free school. If it's to be 4 forms of entry, it falls significantly below the size which is recommended in order to give students a reasonable breadth of opportunities in Key Stage 4. Now, there's a lot of specialist argument about what is the optimal minimum size. And as the government is cutting money to schools, the size of the school you require goes up, clearly. It's generally reckoned in the specialist field that 6 forms of entry is absolute minimum and 8 is desirable in order to provide breadth of opportunities at Key Stage 4. Now, the children, young people who are going to go to this new 4 form, if it is a 4 form entry school, are going to be deprived because they're not going to have the range of opportunities that they might get in a larger school. And I think that aspect of this development has perhaps not been put over clearly enough. It is simply not a good idea to have too many small schools in the secondary phase for the good of all pupils. And I do want us to find some ways of making that point clearly to the citizens of St. Neots. It is not in their interests for this to happen. Now, I know that Keith is, and colleagues are bound in by the decision of the DFE, which, somebody was thinking of we're bound into that. But I want to do what we can to rescue the situation by public objection to the free school.
So, I was going to comment on the free school as well, because
Just a second, I think Julie wanted to
No,
speak.
No, it wasn't about the free school, so if you want to jump in,
Carry
that's
on,
fine.
Jane.
well, I mean, just to build on what Peter's saying, it's obviously we're not going to need that school there, and that means that the other schools are going, or all the schools may not get the pupils they need, so they won't get the money they need. But what I was going to raise is there appears to have been a government U-turn on free schools, and therefore whether it's actually going to happen, I think is in the balance, because there was a report. I did forward this to Keith, and I was going to bring it up on the next item, because Lord Nash, the school's minister, has said that it is important not to have too much overcapacity of school places in the system as a result of the free schools policy, because they're coming back from their 100 free schools a year policy. And he goes on to say, we've created a lot of places, we have created about 3 points and so on. So I think now we need to be a little more selective about where we put them, where there is need, and where, and then it says, and where they may be innovative. So, I mean, it seems to me as there's no need for a free school in St. Neots, but this may well be part of this change of government policy on free schools. And I think that applies to the next item as well.
You can do things. Clearly the DFE hasn't taken a decision yet, or if they have, they haven't told us. But they have sought further information from the council about basic need
Right.
and likely opening dates. And they've said that they will include the information that we've provided as part of their decision making.
Okay.
So maybe that fits in with what you just described.
Yeah, and it does seem to me that, and it goes on to say that the money that was set aside for the free school programme has been obtained by Justin Greening to increase the funding to all schools. So, I mean, it's even more uncertainty, but it does look like there's been a shift in policy. And maybe we should be...
Just when was that article written today, was it?
No, it was Thursday the 14th of September.
It's not long time ago. Lots of things have happened since
Yeah.
then. And for a start, Lord Nash has lost his job.
Oh, no, it is.
Yeah.
Perhaps this is why.
So he's been replaced by the new Lord Agnew,
Yeah.
who happens to be chairman of North Academy Trust, etc., etc., etc. And Theresa May, in her conference speech, appeared to say that they would go for 100 new free schools a year. So we don't know where we are, frankly.
Yeah, but we've still got the responsibility to plan as well. haven't
Yes,
we?
yes, and that is our responsibility. And we've also got, so I'm just stress the point that although we have not got the directives of power, we have got the ultimate responsibility for the well-being of the young people in Cambridgeshire. And I am arguing that the well-being of those children is not best served by having too many small secondary schools.
Or having too many secondary schools where we don't need them.
Yeah, well,
Actually, leading to an answer, Julie's obviously your area as well as mine, so I'd be keen to hear what you've got to say actually.
Oh, okay. Well, it wasn't to do with free schools. It was, I wanted to thank Keith and Penny and the officers for keeping us up, well, myself and the residents up to date with the new primary school that is coming. And my comment was really, or an observation, you say in 3.5 that the current pupil year multipliers revised in 2016, when applied retrospectively to thus far, would show a need for close to 3 forms of entry. And I know that, or I believe that you're bringing in a revision in the near future
yes.
for multipliers again. It was really just to say that the lack of information that is currently surrounding, as you pointed out, the temporary accommodation, the permanent accommodation, it really concerns parents and residents. And it was really just to say that this is the second time that I myself have been in this committee and heard this situation, which happened at Camborne, and here we are again at Love's Farm. And just we really need to try and get this right.
Yes.
Because it doesn't help parents and it doesn't help anybody.
No, I agree, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. One of the challenges for members to be aware of is the discussions that we have with developers about the Section 106 funding to support these new builds, and that is a discussion that can only be based on the agreed multipliers and formulae at the time. And unfortunately, that it was wrong last time doesn't allow us to have a legal argument about us needing more money the next time. But the long and short of it is that the Roundhouse is on a constrained site and it's not feasible to expand it beyond its current 2 forms of entry. With hindsight, it would have, and we'd have had the funding for a bigger site and a bigger school.
Okay, thanks. Simon?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Peter with that, the comment on the free school. It's going to have a massive detrimental effect to existing schools, and even the local authority has said that in their report, and said that there is no need for it to be there. But on the flip side of it, when it was first mentioned about free school, I actually did get a resident write to me who was actually very, very for it. Obviously, you're going to get both sides, but this is where you're going to see probably a stream of people leave our existing schools because children want the best, parents want the best for their children. But I absolutely do agree that it's going to have a detrimental effect on our schools.
Do you want to share that?
I was just suggesting to Councillor Bywater that if the committee wanted officers to write to the DFE's Free Schools Unit to express concern about 4 forms of entry being educationally unviable, then of course we can do that, but that is your decision.
Well, I think that's the general sense around the room.
I would propose that form.
Yes, yes.
So we're happy as a committee to do that. So
Yeah.
if we could make a note of that, then that'd be useful, wouldn't it? I mean, it's really useful for me because obviously as much as I've tried to understand the location, it's good to get local members' points of view really, because
I agree.
you know, I've had similar conversations with other schools in relation to fourth form eventually, and it is a worry, to be honest. It is a worry that we're spreading ourselves too thin. Lots of schools could potentially all be ineffective, so it is an extreme worry that we should. But moving back to the recommendations, anybody else want to speak? Joan, I think you've got
No, I'm
your
fine.
hand. Okay. Anybody else? I think there's a shared concern around the committee, I believe, in relation to this. If we move to the recommendations then, it's to note and endorse strategy for education across Sydney to address the need for future new places in response to the growth arising from the Eastern Expansion development site and increased demand for primary school places in the existing community of Love's Farm. How's everybody viewing those recommendations then? Am I getting a sense that we're happy with those, but we've just got our concerns?
Concerns with sixth form, with the secondary / sixth form provision, if the free schools to enter the vicinity. Yeah. So if we, that would be great. Recommendation, Keith said.
Do we need to clarify that in the recommendation then?
It's an action where you can make those.
Would you like it as an action? I mean, I'm open to the committee can decide. An action? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so those in favour of the recommendations then? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item number 5. Free school proposals. Again, please present the paper for us.
Thank you, Chairman. So this paper gives an update on the Free Schools programme and its impact on the Council's programme to secure new school places for the county's growing population. I wanted to say a few words about Wave 11 because I think it's important that the committee is aware that with regards to Alconbury Weald Secondary School, we are still awaiting a decision from the DFE regarding the improvement to the secondary school, and that of course is tied in with the development of the site. The other free school application that was taken through as part of Wave 11 was in Chatteris Primary School. And this has proved very problematic because the DFE's, we were working with the Active Learning Trust and the DFE to open this primary school as a free school, but the DFE's Free Schools Group would not open with less than 60 places in reception. Now, the development is such that it's not yielding 60 places in reception all in one go. And that would have had some significant consequences for the other primary schools in Chatteris, one of which is sponsored by the Active Learning Trust. So, understandably, the Active Learning Trust withdrew its application to open this free school. That still leaves the County Council with its responsibility to secure places for children in Chatteris as the settlement grows. So we are going to revert to procuring a school through the competition route, and we will time the growth of the school with the growth of the settlement. So with regards to Wave 12, 8 new free schools were approved to the pre-implementation stage, and we've included an update on where these proposals are at this moment in time. As I said, DFE has sought further information from us about basic need and likely opening dates. They've told us that they're going to include that as part of their decision making because as yet all of these proposals have yet to be signed off.
Okay. John?
Yeah, some of these proposals that have been approved are where there is no need, that is correct, isn't it? So when you prepare your response, Keith, I mean, I don't know how one can phrase it, but perhaps one could suggest our somewhat discontent with the fact that they have not given permission for schools to be open that we need, and they have given permission for schools that don't need to be opened. And maybe somehow you could weave that into your information that goes to the DfE. Discreetly, of course. You know, because it just is really silly.
It is really silly.
We have already clearly expressed our view where there isn't a basic need, and I'm very happy to reiterate that in our letter.
Thank you very much. And also the problem of, not approving schools where we do need to have schools. Thank you.
Peter?
Yes, I'd just like to draw attention to the sentence in brackets on the top of page 37. I want to know what world the DfE is living in if it thinks that children come through neatly in a bundle of 60. It is absolutely astonishing. Can we not do anything to explain to them how communities develop and how people have children, and the children don't come in that? It is just unbelievably absurd as a statement. I'm almost weak by that.
I have gathered that.
This really is quite ridiculous, and we ought to make the strongest possible representations to the DfE, to Justin Green or Lord Agnew, wherever he is this week, to get them to make that clear. We cannot plan on that basis.
Their counter-argument is that it's economically inefficient to open with less than 60 places, and they have a presumption against opening in temporary accommodation, and I think that is because temporary accommodation is considered to be not appropriate. The County Council's position, and we've used temporary accommodation on many occasions, is that it can be very appropriate. And temporary accommodation these days, as far as officers are concerned, is of a very high quality.
Yes, and that's a support. Temporary accommodation is not what it used to be.
Yes.
I was here at school, we had temporary accommodation for 30 years, and it was not good. But the new temporary accommodation I visited recently is extremely attractive. And they have rather be in temporary accommodation than in some of the school buildings. I mean, again, it is.
Sam,
I just wanted to, on 3.4 about some of these, I'm thinking how to pronounce it, I just was interested in reading that, because obviously they're talking about a change of site now, to go completely opposite into the county. I don't know why that is, but I'm happy to have a briefing outside that. But the question I've got really is, it says that the DfE is focusing on a site search. Well, we've already done all the site search work, so why are they doing a secondary site search? It just feels really unjoined up, because we're saying, we in certain areas we do need these schools, and this is an area we do actually need this school. And particularly since last time when this came to committee, there was a lot of arguments over where it was going to be placed, and we managed to look at a different location, and that location's been acceptable to the public and actually is on our own land. Surely we should be saying to the DfE, here's the land, and not trying to get them to do this whole site search again, which then could potentially throw up different places which won't be suitable.
They are talking to us about that site search, and we hope that they will be informed by and persuaded by the work that we have done already.
You're not convinced?
I am not the decision maker. They are reserved the right to take their own decisions.
But they have definitely had all the information. Okay.
Yes, going back to Chatteris School, you said that Old has dropped down to running it as a free school. In here you say that there's discussions going on with us using it as a secondary campus.
The idea there is the possibility of the Active Learning Trust being able to open it as a secondary campus, rather than us having to go through a competition to find a new sponsor. But we don't know whether that would be acceptable to the DFE.
So are you looking at that, looking at the secondary campus in parallel to looking for a different sponsor?
No.
So you're going
The
to
same
exhaust,
sponsor.
you're going to exhaust that, and then if that
Yes.
doesn't work, then right, fair enough. The other thing I want to make a point on, hold on, about the Alpenbury Weald secondary school. In 2.1, it says that it will not be viable to open until 2022. In the meantime, secondary provision for the first residents of Alpenbury Weald will be made at Saltry Community Academy until the secondary school opens in the new development. In view of what we're hearing about the building structure for Saltry being unsafe, has this been relayed back to the Department for Education? Because to me, if they're struggling to make the building safe, they need to be planning other means of housing these children.
I understand the point that you're making. I think, and that should say Saltry Village Academy, very much welcomes those additional pupils, and they're part of the solution rather than being part of the problem, because they bring income with them and a need, and that is part of the plan that we're working with Saltry on, that we will be bringing to committee in December.
Are we
So
going,
the
sorry, are
points
we
that
going
you
back to
made-
Department for
Yes.
Education and saying they turn? I understand they turned down applications to help fund getting the school improved. Are we going back to them and saying, you know, in view of this, can you not change your mind?
We are certainly wanting the DFE to support the school. I don't think this would be a driver for it, though.
I think I'll just come in here because obviously you know that my position in relation to Saltry. I think it's very useful for the school to have these pupils. It's not a long-term solution, but it's helping them get through that troublesome period. In relation to the building, and you know, it is well documented the condition of the building. Actually, results-wise, the school's doing very well. It's just a case of our concerns are that the actual capital spend on the building. But I think if we were to pull those children out and send them to another school, I think it would be catastrophic.
I'm not suggesting pulling them out, I'm suggesting using them as a
As a driver
leverage to
yeah.
get more funding.
And hopefully that, I know that the MP's written into Justin doing it here, hopefully we're going to try and set up a meeting, and those are sort of the leverages that I can potentially take if we eventually come to that meeting. Lucy, sorry.
I was going to go back to the similar question to Sam's question about St Bede's moving where their free school is likely to be from Waterbeach to Wisbeach. That's quite a big move. And I just wondered, I mean, there is a need for a new school in Wisbeach, but St Bede's is a particular type of school, and being a church school. I don't know whether that has, I mean, first of all, why has that taken place? Why suddenly switch from suggesting that they'll do one in Waterbeach to one in Wisbeach? Because they are quite different. And what might the implication be for having a very church-focused school in Wisbeach as the second school there? I'm just wondering what the implication for Thomas Park.
Yes.
Maybe we could put it in action.
Find out a bit more background would be
Yes,
Well,
I can at least partly answer that question for you. Of course, the sponsor is approved first of all, and then the DFE works with the sponsor to find a site. So they've approved St Bede's as a free school sponsor, but they've said that Waterbeach is not going to come on stream for some considerable period of time. We would like to work with you to find another site. We understand that there is a basic need in Wisbeach, and therefore would you be interested in opening a school in Wisbeach? In terms of the community need, I cannot be precise and accurate about this, but there is no, it's an interdenominational faith school. There is no school like that in the north of the county. So that might be considered to be bringing additional choice into the system as well.
My question really is about whether what you, I mean, if as was expected, there would be another school opening in the beach that was quite similar to the school that's already there, to standard comprehensive, then I would imagine that children would go according to catchment area, according to which was their nearest school. If one of those two schools is an entirely different type of school, it has implications for the people who choose to go to each of them, and that could have potentially detrimental impact on the other school in the area. That's my concern.
I mean, that's a very important point, because, I mean, we've learned about the social class effect of church schools. I mean, it's not a prejudice, it's a fact that they tend to do better because they attract a different clientele. Now, we already know about the difficulties faced by the other schools, and to have this school, as it were, lumpy siphoning off certain sorts of parents will make it even more difficult.
Yeah.
Can I come back on that?
You can, it's your area, that's fine.
I do hear what you're saying, but I think that's the risk with any additional secondary school you open, that you could then have the effect that people would rather the children go there. There are church schools at the moment in terms of primary, but it doesn't actually seem to have much effect, in the sense that people don't choose to send their children there because it's a church school, or they don't not send their children there. They kind of send it's because of it being a catchment area. Now I know you're saying this is slightly different, but it just strikes to me. It just strikes me that there's a reason. I'd like to know a bit more of the background. There's a reason why the DfE wants us there, and if it's because of this garden town and all of that, I would be loath to kind of kiss goodbye to this potentially good thing. Because we're really running out of time. We need this for 2019, this school, and actually that's like 2 years away. It's not long, and we haven't even started putting the plans in, so we really need to be on.
Can I respond to that though?
You can.
Thank you. Which is that I absolutely agree that we need this school, and I think there is a fundamental agreement that the school is needed. And you've been looking for sites, and sites have been identified, and the school was going to be opened. The reason that the DfE have suddenly said, well, we'll offer this school to St Bede's, is because they need a school to match their sponsor. It's not because they're being particularly helpful about garden towns. And the problem is that the St Bede's in Cambridge takes children from a very wide area around Cambridge. They're picked up by buses and brought into the city. It doesn't serve the children in the area of St Bede's. And in Cambridge, there are plenty of other schools. I mean, the one in Cambridge is surrounded by Netherhall, Coleridge. There are other schools nearby, so that there is effectively parental choice to some extent for parents in that area of Cambridge and the surrounding area. It's not the same in Wisbech, where this school might well pull in particular types of children and parents who can be bothered to go through the application process, and therefore leave the other schools in the surrounding area to take the children who don't get into this one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. Sorry to go between
That's all right, I'm just worried about it.
No, I know what you're saying, but I'm also worried about the converse thing, because we currently, in Cambridge, you're in a lucky situation where you do have that choice, and in Wisbech, your kid has to go to the school. That's it. There is no other choice. And the other Lincolnshire schools and Norfolk schools are closing those avenues, and the only way you have choice is if you pay £10,000 to go to the grammar school, and people don't have £10,000, so I feel like this does provide a choice. And I'm not saying I've actually yes or no on it. I would just like to know more information, because for me this is completely out of the blue. As far as I knew, we were looking for a site search, and we were going to start building a school in 6 or 7 months, but now we're finding out about this, so I'd quite like to know a bit more background.
I was just about to say that. And obviously, this is a free schools proposal, so this is a thing that we keep an eye on anyway.
Yeah.
I think maybe a report in relation to this specific issue would be useful to us going forward. With that, and now go to Liz, sorry, and then Anne.
At the risk of repeating what other people have said, I just wanted to support what Councillor Hoy said, and I'd like to look at this a little bit differently. I'm referring again to 2.1. which is a Cttee village academy. We all know that there's huge difficulties there, and I'm really delighted that their results are good, because that just shows you how good the teaching and learning and also the attitude of the youngsters. However, we do know that there's hemorrhaging of youngsters from that school, and preferential choice is meaning that their youngsters are not going, are likely not to choose a Cttee, which is a huge a shame. The youngsters that are going to come from Albury Wood are going to be bussed in, okay, up to a point. So there's a level of parental choice there as well. And unless we are able to use every possible lever that we can to support Cttee Village Academy to bring its buildings up to the kind of level that we would expect our young people to be educated in, then I think we've missed a trick here. And I do absolutely believe that this sentence about is a lever that we could use. And the youngsters that we have at Cttee are there now. They're not there in 10 years' time. They are now there now. And everything needs to be done to ensure that those buildings are brought up, that their facilities are brought up to a certain standard. And if we could use this as a lever, I would please urge you to.
So would you like the committee like to write to them?
Yes,
To whom?
absolutely.
To whom will be writing?
With Justine Green?
Yeah.
To support our MP that
Yes.
absolutely.
and would corroborate basically what he's saying, and it would come from
Yeah.
us as a committee.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Would members be happy with that?
Yeah.
Can we put that in an action, please? Thank you.
Going back to St Bede's into church school, in Finland there's a severe lack of church schools, and as somebody who attended a church school, I look on this as a big thing, because the criteria for admission to a church school will give preference to those people who go to church regular. It gives them the choice which they don't have at the moment. And I don't think it will be a question of just taking children out of other school because they look on it, it's going to be a better school. I think it's going to be, as a new school, it's going to be very much out of date.
We're running over time with this, so I'd like to try and draw this one to an end if possible. Joan is our last speaker. If anybody else wants to speak, and
No, it's
points
okay.
that we haven't covered.
I'm just going to ask what
I would like to
said
move to the
that St Bede was an interdenominational school, so they don't give preference, do they, to people in particular?
Yes, they do. They're doing all Christian.
Oh, right, okay.
Any faith.
Any
faith. Christian. Any faith. Any faith. Any faith. Any faith.
Yes, I think the action point regarding St Bede's is for us as officers to ask the DFE for an update on progress and to clarify the admissions criteria that are being discussed.
Yeah, I think that would be
Okay, are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just move to... Sorry, Peter.
An item, a detail on paragraph 4, so page 39, about what to do with a special school. I'm rather concerned about the final decision being made by the Regional Schools Commissioner and her head teacher reference group. Now, these head teacher reference groups, the composition, as I understand it, is made by votes among the academy heads. That is their electorate, as it were. Now, some of these heads will, by definition, be members of other trusts. So I want to know what is the validity and objectivity of the head teacher reference group in making this decision.
It's a very difficult question for me to answer, Peter. I'm sure that if there is a conflict of interest, they have to declare it. And the decisions are published. So it's not all of the head teacher reference group that is elected either. It's only part of it. 4 out of 9. I think the others' positions are appointed.
Perhaps we could see...
Not by us. By the Regional Schools Commissioner.
Yeah, very shadowy.
Seems like it. Okay, so should we move to the recommendations then? Okay, so the committee is invited to A, note the latest position regarding wave 11 and 12 free schools in Cambridgeshire, and B, note the progress of the competitions to identify the third sponsor for the new special school with private alcohol agreement. We noted it?
We noted that, and we made other recommendations.
And an action. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move to agenda item number 6, which is the school improvement self-evaluation. Again, Keith is going to...
Yes, this was to it's a pattern emerging here. So, yes, Rosemary Sadler sends her apologies. She had to attend St Philip's primary here in Cambridge, a parents' meeting about their consultation to convert to become an academy sponsored by the Diocese of Ely Mighty Academy Trust. So I'm going to present this to you. The purpose of the paper is to present our school improvement self-evaluation. What I'd like to stress is that this is a working document. It's updated every 6 months. We use this to help us identify strengths, to identify areas for development. We evaluate against Ofsted's framework for inspecting local authority arrangements for school improvement. That was published in September 2015, 2 years ago. But unlike in children's social care, unlike the loo, there is no regular cycle of Ofsted inspections for school improvement. Ofsted only inspect if there is a cause for concern and they cannot gain evidence in a more efficient way. So, for example, they might do a telephone survey of schools, which they did when they were looking at the issue of vulnerable groups' achievement in Cambridgeshire secondary schools 2 years ago. They do inspect some authorities whose data is particularly good to identify effective practice. Cambridgeshire has not been inspected under this framework. However, we are part of the East of England peer review process. We are timetabled for a peer review in the first part of 2018. I presented the provisional data to you last month. We always include that as part of our self-evaluation, so we don't need to go over that again. The main self-evaluation is Appendix 2. As I said, it's a working document. It's the first time that we've been asked to share it with you. So we've provided a list of acronyms in Appendix 3. Hopefully we haven't missed any. If we have, I apologise, and I hope I know what they stand for.
Anne, would you like to say?
Yeah. The whole of this report is 234 pages long, not just this item, but the whole of this. And what I'm finding is a lot of these reports could be condensed. For instance, this Appendix 2, yeah, it's nice to know where we've gone around, but I would rather it would be reporting by exception, just pointing out the areas where we need to improve so that we can ask the right questions and make sure that actions are being taken. I've got no objection to having this report as a link, but then what I would like to see going forward is that we have more the salient points that really we need to focus on, because I found reading through this after a while, it just all blurred into one.
That's why I have it on paper. It's actually easier on paper.
But easier on you now.
But I share that, Peter.
Good.
It is easier on
One
one
thing we
thing.
have in common.
Not many, but...
You do what you want.
Yeah, well, I was probably going to suggest that. This is a working document, and it is our paper. You know, we're the people who read this, we're the people who digest this information, and we want to see it so we can A, understand it, and B, get assurances that we're identifying the risks. And also, sometimes it's nice to see what we're doing well. So, I mean, I'll be open to the committee's views on that. I take your point, but you know, there is a danger that we sometimes don't get enough information sometimes, so we've got to try and find that balance. So perhaps members want to give that some thought. Peter?
Yes. Some specific points, if I may. Please. Page 77. The title, scroll all
No,
down.
I don't need to let him know. I will find it more.
We don't want this turning into a competition.
Concerns regarding secondary schools or academies are raised promptly with the Regional Schools Commissioner. Now I've added then what? What happens if the Regional Schools Commissioner probably fails to do anything about a secondary school that we've got concerns about?
There is always a follow-up discussion when we've raised a concern, and if we did not feel that that concern was being adequately addressed, we would raise that at the Education Achievement Board here at the County Council board that is chaired now by Simon. Gillian Beasley, Wendy, Steve Counterton, etc.
Right.
We always feed back on that to that board.
The second point around here on page 91, I'm a little bit concerned about this. It's about governing bodies. The state is the LA knows the governing bodies that maintain schools, including their strengths and weaknesses. Okay. Now it says that we know some of the governing bodies very well, but there are none of them we do not know. And I'm not clear about that. I'm quite surprised about that. That seems to me to be one of our residual roles, is to make sure that the governments are doing their stuff. What's the explanation of that?
There are some governing bodies that we do not know as well because they're not as engaged with our government services and the training programme, for example. But with regards to statutory responsibilities, for governing bodies of all maintained schools, I can assure you that we know everything we need to for that.
Right. But as local authority, we do have representatives on governing bodies still, don't we?
We do, yes.
Therefore, ought we not to be making contact with them to say, you know, we don't know much about your governing body, but you are there on behalf of the local authority? I wonder whether that's a channel we ought to be making greater use of.
And we do sometimes, but I think that's a fair criticism. We're not as systematic as I think we could be.
Well, I'm only concerned because occasionally being caught out, when we've had a spectacular example, you know, recently, which we don't need to go into, and I do feel that our oversight of governing bodies is something we've got to be very keen on. My last point is a very small one. It's on to page 85, it may just be a typo, but on the bottom paragraph of page 85, we get music services and PE, and then a PE offer and music services offer. Are they different things, or is it just a typo?
I think it's just a typo.
Right.
Joe.
Thank you. A point I'd like to raise, Keith, and it applies to one or 2 points here, but primarily the thing that we've been worried about for years, about this gap between particularly children with special educational needs. And as we've had this extra 6 million from the government to look at specifically Finland and those where there are issues about children's achievement, I really would like to, and it's going back to the point about research, would like to make the point very strongly that I do feel that to try to get to grips with this issue, which has been eluding us for some time, that we should spend some of that money on getting a really in-depth research project going in the area and looking at the schools where children who have got special needs do as well nationally or better, and the schools where, you know, we find this is not the case. And I'm really thinking of you know, an in-depth participant observation study to really try to get to grips with what is going on that's really good practice in the schools that we've got where these pupils are doing as well as they are nationally, or if not better. And what is going on in the schools where it's not happening. Because I think we've tried all sorts of approaches, and I really feel spending some of that money on getting a really good quality in-depth research project will be money well spent. And I really would like to suggest we do
Didn't
that.
we do the same with pupil premium a couple of years ago, where we looked at it and we worked out how some schools were
Yeah.
spending it?
Yeah.
Maybe we could do something similar.
I mean, this I think needs to be more than that, Simon, because we could find that information out by looking at it. But this, it needs someone to go in, actually into these schools and to spend time there doing an observation study to really try and get to grips with what's going on, because it's something that's, we've got all sorts of hypotheses and ideas, including how people spend people premium, but we don't really have really good information. And I think we've got this extra money, and it's a one-off from the government, and I really hope we could invest in some really good quality research and employ someone to do it for us.
Well, yes, and as officers, we would agree absolutely that what has been a very persistent and we know is a very complex problem requires both some short-term and some long-term actions, and a better understanding of what really is behind all of this has to be part of the long-term solution. So I can assure you that we are certainly advocating for funding to be allocated to that work, and for the system as a whole to take an interest in it as well. So in conversations, for example, with the universities, it's making them interested in wanting to research in this area as well, because I think it's a very fertile ground for some very useful research.
But I think it's important that we focus it, or we have a major say in how it's focused and how it's carried out.
Do you want to create an action for that? I mean, how do members feel?
Can I just come back on?
You can, yeah.
From the perspective of the East Counties group, stakeholders group for that, the Newport County Primary School has actually been designated research school in order to do just what you're talking about. And the process of stakeholders is that now working parties are working on various parts of that, and it is intended to drill down, because unless you start with that research, you can't come up with any solutions. So as this evolves, they take your point absolutely. What we do need to do is to have some kind of report to this committee about what those outcomes of those about those plans are, because I don't think they are coming back here, and I don't think they should, just as a matter of courtesy, because of what we do. And it might be worthwhile having a word with the chairs of the opportunities groups to actually feed back to that, because I think that would be really useful.
But I think we also need to be careful, we also need to make sure that the schools we select do fulfil certain criteria, like they are doing very well or they're not doing very well.
That's what, wasn't what I was going to say.
Okay, Liz, can I just stop you there a second, because I think you want to...
Yeah, it was on this issue.
Sorry.
It is a while since we did that piece of work looking at this gap, and I do wonder whether actually, rather than saying we should commission a piece of work now, maybe we should just ask for another report relatively soon to this committee, looking in detail at what's changed since we last. I mean, since it was a member-led review, I think we did it about 5 years ago. So probably things have changed since then. And there is an awful lot of national research out there already on what works and what doesn't. So I just wondered whether we could ask for it to come onto our agenda quite soon. Not a piece of work, but just a report.
How else have we got to get feedback from Keith in relation to the sense of urgency here and how quickly that can be done? Is that something that
Well, I think there are two things here. With regards to the Opportunity Area Fund, Wendy Ogle-Wellborn is the County Council's representative on the programme board, and the action from the last meeting was for her to raise this. So I believe she has done so, and I'm sure that she will report back to the committee on her return from leave, and I'm sure that she will bring the programme board updates to the committee as well, if you would like it to.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. We would be very happy to report on the achievement of vulnerable groups and what we have learned. Even our own analysis of the data has revealed some interesting things recently. It might be more appropriate to do that through a member seminar rather than at a committee meeting, but wherever we would be happy to do it.
Maybe we could discuss that at our leads meeting when we get together with league members. We can perhaps push that along. Is everybody happy with that? Just a second, because I want to come back to Liz, please.
Congratulations on the areas that are doing well, and of course we all realise this is a snapshot of the view of your understanding of where we are, because we have to know where we are to really lost in that that they know where we're going to. But I am concerned about some of the terminology when it comes to judgment 3 in areas where, bear in mind this is a 6-month report, areas where we are not yet effective. The actions largely start with the word continue, and I'm really concerned with continue with the same, because I would want to see some impact from continue. So we could look at continue every 6 months and not actually have an impact from that. So I would like to see some kind of drilling down. I only see the word implement once, and I see the other word develop, but there's this emphasis on what we're doing is the only thing we can do, and we're going to continue to do it. And I would like to not be complacent about that, and to think about, well, actually, are there other things that we could look at which would make an earlier impact?
I think the language is misleading there, because we're constantly looking for new and more successful interventions, and we need to reflect that better in how it's described.
Okay, we've got 2 more speakers, Simone and then Peter, and we'll try and wrap it up then.
Yeah, I just want to pick out a positive part really. It's on area 2.6, page 71. It's to do with the LA's definition, arrangements, procedures and criteria of monitoring, challenging, intervention and support. Clear, sharply focused, comprehensive, understood by schools, school leaders and governors. Basically, it's saying that we are effective in this area, although the impact has not yet come to full fruition. Basically, it's the part that this work is, just pick out a bit, this is underpinned by strong relationships with schools. We are developing our work with primary academies, which, I think the LA and academies should totally still be in contact with each other. So they're developing work with primary academies through an agreed Cambridgeshire Academy protocol. This involves regular meetings with academy CEOs or their representatives, and it goes on to talk about secondary school performance reviews. And also the document where this is received is from the LA protocol working with free schools and academy. Is that something that, I'm really quite happy to look at that, and I would like a copy if anyone else is, would want one. I think it's very important that we continue to work closely with our academies and free schools. So yeah, if I could have one of them.
Yes, absolutely. We could make it available to the whole committee through the minutes, or you can have a copy. It's one of our working documents, and it is very important.
Yeah, I think it's an important factor that I'd like to read a bit more about. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Peter.
Well, it was just a pick up a point you made a few minutes ago about getting a bit better understanding of how extra money is being used effectively. Since we last did that work, it is probably 3 or 4 years ago, all schools have been required to publish on their website a clear statement of how they use the pupil premium and how effective it has been. Now, I haven't had the time to search all the websites of the school from Cambridgeshire. I'm obviously with my own governing body, and we spend a lot of time on that document, both from a financial perspective and from the education perspective. Now, that is a gold mine of ideas and comparative data. So that is, we would be starting with a blank piece of paper with a lot of information. So perhaps we could see if that's happening and do a little more work on that.
We have done that. We have looked at all schools' websites, the use of pupil premium. That kept the primary advisors happy for a while. Again, that is something that we could also bring.
Did it find emerge?
It was we worked alongside the Cambridge University postgrad students who've been looking at this as well. One of the interesting findings, I don't want to steal their thunder because they're presenting in December, but one of the things that we found was that in the more affluent parts of the county, pupil premium tended to be spent on more whole school extracurricular type initiatives. In the less affluent parts of the county, pupil premium tended to be more targeted to interventions supporting individual pupils. So there were some differences both at that macro level and in what schools were spending it on. So we could include that as part of what we present when we talk to you about the achievement of vulnerable groups. Thank you.
And I think it's worth adding that the surprising, which surprises most people, that the children with special needs in more affluent areas were doing less well than the children with special needs in where there are more often.
Which just makes sense that it's not about what they did, it's what impact it would have.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of those pupil-friendly activities did not work, which is why we are where we are with the disadvantaged groups. And it's about which of those activities work for different types of youngsters, and that's the next piece of work that's been done, isn't it? Been done, isn't it? Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move to the recommendation. I think we've debated this, unless anybody's got any other points on the case. Page 45, we're asked to note the findings and comment as appropriate, which I think is what we've done. Okay, we've got some actions and reports coming.